movies are one of my favorite forms of media, so I decided to make a list of 10 movies. I have to make it abundantly clear that the goth subculture exists still as just music. Goths aren't really obligated to know about goth movies in order to know about their own subculture. Reading my list: Donnie Darko, Harold and Maude, The Crow, The Hunger with David Bowie, Interview with a Vampire, The Addams Family, Nosferatu, Repo the Genetic Opera, and Tim Burton movies, which I haven't decided, but one of my favorites from Tim Burton is Edward Scissorhands, so I believe I'm gonna include that one first. Beautiful characters, very dark looking, has a gothic castle. It does talk about death a lot. Well, it has a certain, tainted aspect to it, that he is not innocent. The music is so iconic, and it's definitely about Halloween, which is a goth's favorite holiday. There is an album called Nightmare Revisited, which is covers of the movie done by different artists. Very great album. I think you should check it out. I was recommended this movie by a lot of different friends, and finally, when one of my other goth friends recommended to me yet again, I decided to watch it. Nothing in the plot strikes me as goth, maybe some psychological horror elements, but when I heard the soundtrack, there are artists like Joy Division, The Church, Oingo Boingo, Echo and the Bunnymen, and Tears for Fears. So if you are not watching this movie for the plot, but want to get familiar with goth music, definitely watch it for the soundtrack. Harold and Maude, which is a movie from the 70s, does not have anything related to goth music, but I think it's cool because the main character has a very complicated relationship with death and drives a hearse. Definitely self-explanatory. It has become a part of mainstream media, however, which might make it more likely to be rejected by goths who like gatekeeping, or elder goths who just don't really want anything to do with the mainstream, so they might have not heard of Addams Family, or they are just very calm about it, which is understandable. I'm pretty calm about the Addams Family myself. Morticia is generally probably stereotyped, one of the stereotypes that someone thinks of when they see a goth person. They think of, oh, Addams Family. Or they think of, oh, like the Crow, like they're so edgy and they have white face paint like the Crow. Which leads me into a pretty good soundtrack with Nine Inch Nails and The Cure, but it was also around the time that these bands became very mainstream, and the overall edginess of, even though it's romantic and dark, it's still a very edgy movie and has a lot of influence over people's minds now when they think of goth. Personally, I have done a look like The Crow before I have seen The Crow, so I have been myself almost a victim of goths comparing me to The Crow. Instead of normal people, it's usually goths that believe it's so edgy and mainstream. I feel that's why they bully me for it, because it's edgy and mainstream. but it's still a good movie, I guess, and all of these movies are worth checking out. The opening scene of The Hunger with David Bowie is Peter Murphy singing Bela Lugosi is Dead. Behind a cage, he's singing it like that through a cage, which is extremely goth and extremely spooky. And although the movie doesn't make a lot of sense to me overall, I would still say that it's one of the greatest, weirdest movies that belong on a list of goth movies. Nosferatu is a very dark, classic movie, black and white, silent film that I think a dedicated goth who is a big fan of romantic themes and the Victorian era, they could sit through this movie at least once or twice. I've seen it personally at least 3 times, if not 4 or more. They're romantic, they're dark. I think Brad Pitt is hot. I'm not gonna say anything about Tom Cruise, but it's a great movie and very cozy. Yeah, the self-explanatory. I have to make a disclaimer that if you watch it, there are almost no words. Everything is sung, and the main point of the movie is that it is done in a gothic industrial music genre and also takes place in a very post-apocalyptic industrial universe where everything revolves around a drug. And I believe that industrial is a very integral part of one of goth's many subgenres of music. So Repo the Genetic Opera should definitely be on this list. But one that is goth related that I did not mention in this list is a movie called My Summer As A Goth, which basically is a YouTube movie where a girl is turned into a goth after she meets a few people from the subculture, and she starts living her life by going to parties and dancing at cemeteries, which, as much as it is a huge joke, if you choose to watch it, it is a huge joke, but it's still a really nice movie, and I think the representation is less edgy and more wholesome than something like Addams Family or The Crow or Donnie Darko would be. It's actually about goths. Okay, that's all I wanted to say. Welcome back if you're not new, and hello